So for more insight on what we can see this morning and what it all means, let's turn to Jamil Jaffer. He's director of the National Security Law and Policy Program at George Mason University and former chief counsel and senior advisor for the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Jamil, thank you again for being with me. We are hearing that this is in motion and could take place at any moment. We're looking at live pictures, of course. This is Gaza City Square, some call Palestine Square there. You see Hamas flags. You see a lot of civilians gathered in anticipation. How do you expect this second hostage exchange to unfold?
Well, Shannon, what we've seen over the last few hostage exchanges, there was a major one a few months earlier in the conflict, and then obviously one last week. And typically what happens is you have the hostages handed over to the Red Cross, and then they're brought down to the Kerem Shalom border crossing there from Gaza into Israel, where they're then picked up by Israeli vehicles and then transported into Israel itself. And then there are points at which they're able to meet their families, and we see that connection happen. That's what we saw happen last time. We'll likely see something similar again.
Exactly. I do believe, again, these are live pictures from Gaza City. You can see a vehicle with the International Red Cross symbol on it. Also split screen, I believe that's live pictures, correct? Control room of the families waiting for the hostages to be released. They are watching, of course, this all unfold live. And these are four very young female Israeli soldiers, 20 years old. One is only 19 years old, Liri Albag. We have 20-year-old Karina Reeve, 20-year-old Daniela Gilboa, and 20-year-old Nama Levy, who are expected to be emerging and exchanged at this time. Again, Jamil, this scene that you see the soldiers there with arms, this is a process that so far seems to be going rather smoothly. What are your thoughts as you're watching this unfold?
Well, look, a 15-month battle has, I think, worn down both sides, and I think patience is worn thin in Israel with getting the hostages back. Obviously, what happened on October 7th was atrocious. It's the equivalent, Shanley, of a dozen 9/11 attacks on a population-adjusted basis. So if you think of what we in the United States went through on 9/11, and then multiply by that by 12, and you have a sense of what the Israeli population went through. But even more than that, if you hear about what happened on that day and you read the accounts and you go visit those sites that I had a chance to do about a month ago, it's really just the barbarity and the depravity of what these terrorists did to young women and men and the people they kidnapped, and the way they treated them in those moments is just appalling. And so you have this real sense that the Israeli people want their hostages back, in part because they don't want this to continue to torment them. At the same time, the Israeli government rightly wants to see Hamas destroyed and taken to pieces for what they did and what they may do in the future. And so, what we'll see now after these hostages are handed over and after the next sort of 7 to 8 weeks happen and the full exchange happens, there will still remain another 60 hostages there in Gaza. Both Israelis, Americans, other foreign nationals. And the real question is, how do you get those back, and how do you come to some sort of longer-term settlement where Israel can be assured its security and the Palestinian people can get the aid they're looking for from the international community?
That's right. That's a key part of the ceasefire agreement. 600 aid trucks per week, I believe it is, during this process, much needed in the Gaza Strip that has just been decimated over the 15 months of war between Israel and Hamas. But this picture I'm seeing, the video I'm seeing, still after 15 months of war, Hamas, the terrorist group, seems to still be a show of force, much still together. Is that something that you feel is maybe a bad sign for what Israel and the optics of this ceasefire deal will ultimately end up meaning?
Yeah, look, this is part of the challenge. Hamas controls the aid trucks when they get into Gaza. And so It's not like the aid is going directly to the people of Gaza. What's happening is Hamas is getting it. They're giving it to their fighters first. And then they're using it to recruit young people and saying, hey, look, you want food for your family? Come join Hamas. Commit to us a year or 2 years of service. And so, it's not just, the Palestinian people in Gaza are affiliated with Hamas because they want to. It's essentially a mafia controlling, a terrorist mafia controlling, 2 million people. And so the Israelis are aware of this. And so, but it's very hard to figure out how do you get the aid into the hands of the people that need it, while at the same time not empowering the very terrorist group that's conducted these attacks. They're then taking those things, selling them to people within Gaza or trading them, and then eventually trying to get weapons smuggled in. When we were at the Kerem Shalom border crossing a month and a half ago, you see all the contraband being smuggled in. A lot of it, interestingly enough, is cigarettes. Cigarettes are going for a huge premium in Gaza during this conflict, and they smuggle cigarettes in otherwise, regular aid material in the side linings of the boxes and the like. And so, it's a real challenge. And so we'll see how this proceeds forward. But at the end of the day, the better resolution for all sides is to get the conflict over with, get the hostages back, and then figure out what some sort of a settlement looks like.
Exactly. And for the families of the hostages, can you even put into words what they may be anticipating or feeling in these moments as they watch their family members released?
I can't even imagine what it's like to have your 19 or 20-year-old daughter held for 15 months by brutal terrorists. Just imagining the horror of what she must be going through, even if it's just captivity. But you imagine what other horrors might have been visited upon any of these young women, and it must be debilitating for the families. And now to get them back, obviously that's just the first step in the process, getting them back, and then helping them recover and return to any sort of normalcy. I think will be a years-long process for the young women and their families.
Absolutely. World Health Organization saying these hostages could suffer, lifelong consequences from their time in captivity. And again, for those just joining us, we are looking at live pictures of Palestine Square or Gaza City Square, where we have civilians and militants gathering for this exchange of 4 female Israeli soldiers as the second wave of hostages are released in this first phase of the ceasefire agreement. And I know, Mr. Jaffer, you can also see these live pictures as you're watching. Is anything standing out to you?
Well, I think obviously you see people with weapons there, and I think that's part of the challenge, as you've rightly pointed out. We know that these groups are still armed and still have capabilities, and that's going to be something that the Israeli government's going to be closely watching. There's no doubt they're watching who's in the square, identifying these individuals. Obviously, some of them are covered up, and identifying who the fighters are, then maybe following them even as they leave and trying to identify where they're going. And so part of the challenge here, if you think about the real challenge about fighting in Gaza and fighting Hamas, is that these are terrorists who don't care for the rules of war, who don't care for the civilians of Gaza, and so they hide their weapons